Welcome to the latest episode of Beatin' and Bangin'. I'm your host, Kyle Dalton. Today's video features a couple of news items from the day, including Kyle Busch offering his interesting take on the Denny Hamlin move with Kyle Larson on Sunday at Pocono, and a revealing new report on the business of NASCAR that shows who are the top teams when it comes to sponsorship revenue. The top dog is not who you think it is. Before we reveal that answer, let's go back to Sunday's race at Pocono and the controversy between Denny Hamlin and Kyle Larson. Both drivers offered their thoughts after the race on the NBC broadcast. Each driver then echoed those same thoughts with some more detail on their respective podcast a day later. As I reported in yesterday's video, Hamlin's Joe Gibbs Racing teammate Martin Truex Jr. called the move dirty. But what about Hamlin's former JGR teammate, Kyle Busch? He was asked about it today on SiriusXM NASCAR radio and the overall more aggressive driving in the Cup Series. Here's what he had to say.
Yeah, so this is the struggle that I've had the last probably 5, 6, 7 years of racing in the Cup Series, where the dynamic has completely changed. So could Denny have done that differently and raced it out and raced it clean and done a side draft down the backstretch and seen where everybody kind of positioned into the next turn and the next turn and the next turn after that? Sure, that there's a way that you can run clean and you can race side by side, but all you're going to do is draw in the rest of the competition behind you, and everybody is so close that, you know, the guys, if you're stuck side by side, you're going to allow third place to jump into the picture, and they might even just go by the both of you and clear you, and now you're still stuck side by side with that guy, and the third place guy is now the leader and he's gone. So it's just a different dynamic. You know, with the competition being closer and the cars being closer, you have to mess up the guy that you're racing, that you're around. You have to push him out of the groove. You have to pinch him tight to make him get tight, and then, you know, you have to pull a slide job on him to get in front of him and take his air. Like, it's racing. It's just a different form of racing. I don't know whether you call it dirty or whether you call it greedy. I think it's both of those things. But you know, I've been seeing it a lot out of the younger generation, the kids and stuff like that, coming up through the ranks, and how they do it in ARCA, how they do it in the Truck Series, how they're doing it in Xfinity, and now it's come up to the Cup Series, and so it's just this vicious cycle of how to race. But it's a hell of a lot damn more exciting, I guess, than it once was in the Jeff Gordon, Mark Martin, Rusty Wallace, Bobby Labonte era, where the racing was a lot cleaner. You gave each other room. If a faster car caught you, you let them go. You hope for the same favor later. Now it's, if they catch you, try to hold them off as long as you can and screw them up so they don't go by you, because track position's everything.
If you'll recall, it was just a few months ago that Busch said similar words around the topic of respect. It sounds like the two-time champion has resigned himself to leaving the clean way of racing in the past and embracing this new, and as he described it, exciting style of racing, which in the end might ruffle a few feathers, but if that's what it takes to win, then, as the drivers so often like to say, it is what it is. Moving on to our next story, and it's a fascinating one. For months, there have been talks about NASCAR and its new television deal, which is set to start in 2025. Representatives of the teams, including the aforementioned Jeff Gordon, have been outspoken about how the current business model isn't working because it's too dependent on sponsors. The hope is, with the new TV contract, the teams will get a larger piece of the pie and not be so dependent on those sponsor dollars. Today, a report came out that detailed just how much each of the teams is making in sponsorship dollars in 2023, and it's a fascinating breakdown. The top dog is somewhat of a surprise in Team Penske, which will bring in just north of $140 million this year with 38 sponsors, but this also includes crossover deals with their IndyCar team. Coming in a surprise second is Kyle Busch's new team, Richard Childress Racing, with a total of 53 sponsors generating $104.55 million. It sounds like RCR didn't have any problems finding sponsors for the two-time champion like officials from his previous team repeatedly claimed last year. And that's what makes the number 3 organization on the list even more interesting, because it is Busch's former team, Joe Gibbs Racing, with 34 sponsors and $98.95 million in revenue. Rounding out the top 5 are the big 4-car teams you'd expect, with Hendrick Motorsports and Stewart-Haas Racing at $92.67 million and $70.49 million, respectively. Others of note are Front Row Motorsports at just over $43 million, Roush Fenway Keselowski at $36.6 million, 2311 Racing at just over $30 million, Legacy Motor Club at $20 million even, and probably one of the most surprising is Trackhouse, coming in second from last at $13.74 million. All of it combined equals 407 active sponsorship deals at a whopping value of just over $767 million. My big takeaway from this is just because you're a well-funded and high-dollar sponsored organization, that doesn't necessarily translate into success. It also makes me think teams like Spire, Trackhouse, and JTG Doherty are getting plenty of bang for their buck. And lastly, there was another portion of this report that showed who are the top sponsors in the sport across all 3 series. Coming in at number 1 is really no surprise, with Chevrolet at $48.05 million annually. Next up is Xfinity, which appears twice in the report, the first being a 10-year, $20 million a year deal as the title sponsor of the second-tier series, plus an additional $15 million annually as one of NASCAR's premier partners. Coca-Cola, Busch Light, and Geico all reportedly spend that same amount each year. Next in line is Sunoco Fuel, which spends an estimated $26.5 million annually, followed by Goodyear, which supplies the tires and sponsors the Goodyear 400 at Darlington for $25 million annually. I'm definitely not a financial expert, but based purely on the numbers, it appears NASCAR and its teams are bringing in a sizable chunk of money. However, as Gordon and other top team execs have suggested, there still needs to be a change to the model because those dollars are not enough. What exactly that looks like isn't quite clear just yet, but you'd have to think it will include the teams getting a bigger chunk of money and adding more zeros to the bottom line. I do know this, as a fan, the healthier the teams are financially, the better it is for the long-term future of the sport. What do you think about the numbers? Any surprises? And what are your thoughts on Kyle Busch's comments on Denny Hamlin and Kyle Larson at Pocono? Let me know in the comments. Thanks as always for checking out the channel. If you like the information you get in my videos, please let your fellow NASCAR fans know what we're doing here at Beatin' and Bangin'. And if you'd like to read more articles like this video, please check out my stories at sportscasting.com. There's a link in the description. We'll see you in the next video, and have a great rest of your day.